I've been tasked to moderate this panel, and it's a pleasure to work with these lovely women, which I have to say, even in our pre-discussion, sparks were flying. So could I please ask to come to the stage Noel Asmar, CEO of the Noel Asmar Group. Cristina Schiavolin, Managing Partner of Praxis. Elaine, Creator and Designer of Fabrick Lab. Welcome. And Ronna Chao, Chairman of Novetex Textiles. So what you're seeing here with these amazing women is a real commitment to finding a solution for what we've created. And again, going back to Fred, he said, you know, sometimes the solution is not with the people that created the problem. It's with people that are coming into the industry with fresh eyes and a fresh outlook. But I think we still have something to contribute and to be stewards to that new generation. So without much ado, I'd like for Noel Asmar to talk to us about her hospitality life cycle. Did I say that right? Yes.
Thank you, Jessica. That was very inspirational, by the way. We are very tame compared to what you started off with on the stage. I'm actually, like some of you in the audience, I'm originally a hospitality professional turned functional designer. And my inspiration was really the staff behind these incredible institutions that make all of our businesses possible. I'm on maybe what might be considered the less sexy side of fashion, and I focus really on the employees that bring our brands to life. But the beauty in producing function, purpose-driven apparel is that it tends to last a lot longer. And when you buy purpose-driven apparel, you seldomly throw it away. So a couple of years ago, we started to design uniforms using recycled water bottles and producing designs that we could use these fabrics. And it led me to start asking some important questions in our hotel within our hotel portfolios that we are working with. What do you do with these uniforms once they've expired? And what are you doing with the towels, the sheets, the blankets, all of these other textiles that the hospitality industry, it's part of our operations? And the most common answer was that they try to donate them. You may think this is a sustainable approach to managing textiles, but in our industry, this is an abundance of textiles that normally ends up in the landfills. So I've discovered, much like yourselves, you start poking around and asking questions, and I was stunned to find out what I started to learn. So this conversation around sustainability in the textile industry, there isn't one single sourced expert. There's not one body in the world that can tell you what to do with your textiles. So what do we do? And I think, again, the common theme in the room today is, you know, we all have to be doers, and we have to start somewhere. So I'm really excited to announce that we're launching our first initiative called Hospitality Lifecycle. And it's an initiative to bring together the resources that will be out-of-the-box thinkers to take these textiles and either recycle them and look for innovative ways to upcycle them. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And yes, I think it starts with these great ideas, and you know, I think that you'll find that that's going to be almost a boon for the consumer when they know that the hospitality chain that has, you know, wanted to do that, it's another selling tool for them, and it's a marketing tool. Yeah. Falling into textiles, Ronna, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. I'm a third-generation yarn spinner. It's a business that was started by my grandfather in the 50s. And we have now expanded into, we basically call ourselves your complete yarn resource. So we don't just do natural fibers, but the latest innovation within our business is the Billy system. And we developed this system really originally to look at ways to deal with our own waste production in the manufacturing process. In the yarn spinning process, in the sweater knitting process, in the branded apparel, we own two very major brands, global apparel brands in the past. There's a lot of excess. But what is excess, what is dropping out of the machines during the spinning process, in the dyeing process, the knitting process, the additional garments that are made, the additional garments that aren't sold, all of that has value. And number one, it has value. Number two, if we just put it away, whatever way we dispose of it, even if you talk about donation, it's not a complete solution. I don't have a complete solution, but I think it's important that we all work together from our own place first. So the Billy system is a textile upcycling system. We can take garments, linens, raw materials that aren't used, and turn it back into fiber, and we blend it with virgin fiber to make into new yarns that can be made into new products.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what's stunning, I don't know if you want to give us some data as far as, you know, the impact of what you're trying to do versus the actual, you know, onslaught of recyclable materials that need to be, you know, processed.
In the video that we saw earlier, I think it's produced by Sloan.
Yeah.
Brilliant video, but there's one piece of statistic that I would like to correct. The daily amount of textile waste that goes into Hong Kong landfills, only in Hong Kong, is 370 tons, not 250. 370 tons of textile waste that goes into our landfills just in one city daily. And that number is from 2017, if I remember correctly. I have 3 lines of the Billy system in a typo factory in Hong Kong. Each line at full capacity can only process 1 ton of textile waste. So you can just imagine how big the issue is.
Yeah, the disparity, it's, yeah, you're trying, no matter how you try, you can't get ahead of it. So that's a real issue. So I'd like to now turn to Elaine, because one of the wonderful things that we are discovering is that even though we're in the 21st century and, you know, we have all this innovation and technology, but should we go back to craftsmanship and to, you know, a smaller kind of production?
Bit about my background.
Yes.
I'm trained as a weaver. A lot of people thought I was joking, that you can get a degree in weaving in 21st century. So my background and relationship with textiles start from a thread and a shuttle and a traditional loom. And then move into technology. But 5 years ago, actually 8 years ago, it was the first time I went to Guizhou in China, I realized the problem that they had, not just poverty, but actually the deteriorations of heritage craft because of industrializations, everyone and rely on fast fashion. They neglected the resources they have and from our origin and heritage. And quite quickly, I start engaging with the local villages, and I found out it was really difficult to communicate. One, that I don't speak the local dialects and language, they don't speak Mandarin, they couldn't read or write. It was difficult even for me to learn the names. And most importantly is I was trying to ask them, how did they make that piece of textiles? They were showing me incredible textiles from the archives, from the trunks at home. They couldn't explain to me. They could only explain to me that was done by the mother or the grandmother and the meaning of the patterns, but they have no associations of how these were made. Then realize if we don't do something about archiving the actual craftsmanship and work is being done, then very soon they will all be behind a glass in museums, and that will be disassociated, and manufacturing will leave with identical products. So that I start a heritage research initiative called Unfold 5 years ago. And this year, I've launched a brand called Unfold Stories, because I see we need to do something about conscious design to impact the actual production system. It's really important to make awareness of something that has 200 years of craftsmanship, of batik, of weaving. Actually 1,000 years of craftsmanship in weaving. They need to keep going and not be replaced by just electronics and automation.
And Elaine, what's the best way to promote that and to thank them and to assist them in maintaining and conserving their craftsmanship? Is there anything that we can do to promote that?
Yeah. In the past 5 years, the most difficult thing I found is actually spreading the words. How do we work within the marketing sectors, actually? It sounds very commercial, but it is true. Like the first time I went to pitch the stories and the project and the product to department store, they said, Elaine, we don't have 20 minutes to engage with our consumers, our clients. You have 10 seconds. If you catch their eyes' attention, the product is sold. Then the story comes after. The hand feel, the look of it is very important. It needs to be relevant to the market and the lifestyles and the overall theme. It needs to have the handwriting of the stores and also the market. It's very different from how you can see the actual authentic original products in the village. It is very indigenous. The patterns, it's difficult to wear. That's why I started to modifying the motifs, making them to large scale so then it can merge into our daily lifestyles. And the second thing is big brands need to engage. They need to understand the time and the value that each craftsmanship and craftsmen are spending in their products. Take an example.
Yeah. Go ahead, no?
So we've been trying to work with some denim manufacturers, and they said natural, and they all understand natural indigo that have a lifespan, and they can only apply certain amount of textiles to work on it every day. Otherwise, that would die. The microbes won't work with the dye. So it's a beautiful living object, actually. But then it's not commercialized enough. But then we can't commercialize to create the facilities in the village because there's not enough brands to buy in the consistent amount of volume that we need. So it's a chicken egg situation.
Exactly. And it's, again, a perfect segue, Cristina, because we were talking about what needs to change, What needs to change?
I think that all the ladies we have here are great experts in sustainability, but I think what is coming up is that perhaps our management way of considering sustainability is yet not at the same pace. So we speak quite a bit about environmental challenges, because it's quite sexy to speak about the environment. So you speak about the textile, you speak about the plastic, you speak about the polar bear, et cetera, and it's easy, it's very good for communication, very good to spin. We also speak about the craftsmen, we speak about the people. They are working in our companies and how what we are doing with them is helping them. In fact, if you go to Facebook today, there are so many pictures about employees and craftsmen and this and that it looks like fantastic. And these are important pillars of the sustainability, I believe, especially the people, because it touches all the points transversal in the organization. And they are very nice items to talk about. But then what we don't talk about, and if you go to any school, they tell you, well, a sustainable company should have environmental, social, and economic pillars. Nobody talks about the economic pillar. Yeah. So the economic pillar is being able to execute in an economic sense the other two pillars. So it means that you have to convince your board to do what is good for your community, for your employees, for all these people. And that is not very sexy if you think about it. I mean, you have to really struggle. Is a bit of a Bernie Sanders moment. You have to struggle and say, no, maybe we don't make the budget this year because we have to invest in our community. And community is always a good word in social media, 17 million, I think, of posts on Instagram. But when you actually talk about the community in economical sense, okay, raise your salary, pay your suppliers fairly, it becomes a completely different type of community, right? So I think that that is the area that needs to be innovated in the discussion about sustainability, because it's very hard. The companies that are able to do this are normally very big companies, or companies that decide to stay small, say the Japanese breweries, or the Indonesian indigo people, or others. And there are very few companies that are able to manage today the complete sustainable cycle and being supported by the board.
Yeah.
So I think that that is an area that we should look more into.
You know, across our pre-conversation that we had yesterday, the one thing, again, that has to change is the value system. It's our value system. And it starts, again, guess what? With the one person. So if values change, and of course we went into what that means in a boardroom or in a publicly traded company where shareholders are, you know, deciding many things, it's quite difficult. But I think that's the next generation is going to expect a different form of measurement for success than just the bottom line. I mean, and it's not.
One of the three guys who are running today, beautiful, I think one of them is going to have the same problem.
Exactly. Right? Noel, you wanted to add something.
I think it's also about taking responsibility and the accountability, and where does that start? And you know, it's on the side of the manufacturers, those that are making apparel. It's also the accountability, those that are purchasing.
Yeah.
And you know, in our industry, in hospitality, I think gone are the days where you can go dump apparel. Nothing's free. Like, you cannot go dump for free. There is a cost. There's a social cost. There's a financial cost, and we just need to update our thinking to support the fact that as consumers, whether we are a business consuming apparel, we also have that responsibility. And I think, you know, in the audience here, if we talk about doers and looking back a year from now, there's a lot that we could be doing with our own businesses to impact what's going on in the textile industry. And you're right, there's an economical cost.
There is, and it's just there's just a value system. Again, you know, are we willing to be a disruptor? You know, are we willing to disrupt what we currently know?
But also, I think it's also about how we prioritize what is the most important thing as a value of the consumers and the brands, and making sacrifices. Like, sustainability is always about an ecosystem. How do you engage eight parties in equilibrium formula? So I think, like, when they decided they want to do better to the planet, they need usually natural dyes. Natural dyes is always a big problem in commercializations. But then if everyone in the industry and brands, they agree they will spend more in natural substances, then naturally people will understand they will pay more for the products, and no $2 t-shirt anymore. And that shouldn't really be this within the ecosystem.
Yeah. I think that again, in the fashion industry, and I'm just, again, that's kind of where we all have a commonality here, is that not only should we think about the visual part of fashion, the looking good part of it, you have to do good now. You know, and that's, I don't know what that looks like again, but maybe, you know, with the brain power that that we have here, and with the intention to change things, that's the way it's going to be. Does anybody else want to add anything, Ronna? Do you want to?
I wanted to echo the point about accountability. And we also talked about collaborative partnerships. I think it was yesterday in one of the other panels. It's very easy for anybody to point blame.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I'm less guilty, but you're more guilty. You're more responsible. But I think the important thing is to look at oneself first. Where is your accountability? If I look at the amount of textile waste there is, I can't really pinpoint who is the culprit. Of course, you can say, oh, it's the brands, it's the manufacturers. Why do they have to make so much if they know that it can't be sold? They don't really know it can't be sold. They want it to be sold because they think the consumer wants it. And then the consumer buys a lot, but there's still stuff left over. And then if you look at the manufacturing process, even in just looking at myself, just looking at our operation, why do we have yarn that's spun and dyed that doesn't sell, or that's just sitting in our warehouse? It's because when the Gap comes in orders, places an order for 100,000 pounds of X, I do have to make more to cover for margin of error. So let's say it's 10 or 15% more, but they're not going to take that extra 10 to 15%. So I think it has to be a collaborative effort at different points of the cycle in the process. Better projections, better data analysis, listening to your consumer, and then listening to your own staff, looking at sales, marketing, what's left. I've recently met with a customer who has years and years and years of excess inventory in a warehouse somewhere, because there's value, because they cannot just put it in a landfill, because they cannot just burn it, but they also cannot just sell it in the market. So there has to be some group thinking at different stages to come up with better solutions, I think.
Yeah, the fashion depreciation, don't let anybody ever tell you, oh, you're making an investment, because trust me, you're not. So depreciated inventories is a huge thing, and it's shocking not only from a manufacturing, but you have it in the wholesale industries, and you go into retail stores in the back end, and they have as much in the back as they do up front. So it's again, I'd love to close with saying thank you for enlightening us. I had a great time pre-discussion this. You've opened my mind, and I hope that we've inspired you to maybe think twice next time you want to purchase something and move the needle.